Thank you so very, very much to Nathanael and also to Claude Parent. To just also say that we have the pamphlet Claude Parent wrote, The Migration Imperative, which you can pick up together also with many other printed matter of the marathon. There is also Pedro Reyes manifesto and pamphlet, and there is a program book and all of that. I've got the great pleasure now to introduce our next speaker, Suzanne Lacy. Suzanne Lacy, the legendary artist and writer whose work is focused on interventionist art, policy, and the public sphere. Her large-scale public performances in installations, videos, and also photographic series and texts explore issues relevant to social equity and art's role in social change, very much the question of the social contract in art. Lacy's early practice foreshadowed many themes in current debates on relational, analytical, and also community-based practices, which have been the focus of a long interview we recorded recently. Suzanne has published numerous books, and some have actually come out very recently. The most recent one will be presented at the very end of her performance, so there will be a book signing. Just to mention a few recent titles, Leaving Art, Writings on Performance, Politics and Publics, and also the book Spaces Between Suzanne Lacy. They have just been released. Lacy has designed college-level programs and held administrative and teaching positions both. And today, she will actually regenerate a work from 1974. So this is a regeneration of the Prostitution Notes, a performance from 1974. And Suzanne will be assisted by Heidi Höffinger. A very warm welcome to Suzanne Lacy.
Thank you. This was, as Hans-Ulrich said, it's a reading of my original experiences in 1974, so you know who the voice is. And this has been prepared specifically for the marathon. It's the first time I've done this since 1974. The notes are, that you'll see in the video are redrawn by a younger artist, Bay Valls. May 9th, 1974, lunch at Sarno's. I meet Kristen Becker and her friend at Sarno's Cafe at 12:10. I have a salad and cappuccino at 1968 prices. Kristen is running for city council on a prostitution ticket. She tells me she's not, however, a hooker, although she is organizing an LA branch of Coyote. That's Call Off Your Old Tired Ethics. I show them pics of my last performance. Chris tells me she used to paint until her father fucked with her painting. She tells me about her research, Pros Court Monday morning or watching whores at Santa Monica and Western. They work for the Church of Naturalism. They assure me they are interested not only in helping hookers, but in old people and blacks and poor people and the mentally ill, among others. They're interested in massage and Feldenkrais and somatotypes and plants too. In fact, it's hard to get them to talk about prostitution.
Anyone you know ever turned a trick?
What is the form here? Is it a performance, a set of photographs, an installation? Tracking down names from friends, I plan meetings over coffee or lunch. My appointment book is riddled with instructions for getting there. Times, names, maps across the surface of Los Angeles. I record this journey, my questions, what I'm eating. I collect matchbook covers and draw diagrams, and when I'm really bored, I affix decals. May 14th, 1974, cappuccino with Margot in San Francisco. 2 cappuccinos at 4 p.m. with my students from the San Francisco Art Institute. Too many Italian and Chinese fortune cookies. The students leave, and I call Margot St. James, who began Coyote, to arrange a meeting at Cafe Sport. I should not have had that second cappuccino. I am very spacey. I can't pull myself together. I'm nervous. I'm afraid of meeting a super hooker. I'm afraid of being rejected by the outsiders with whom I identify.
Would you know a hooker if you passed her on the street?
I wait 45 minutes, drinking wine and soda to calm my nerves. I look up every time the door opens. Finally, Margot arrives and orders a cappuccino. She's horsey looking, friendly, and seems to drop into the middle of a conversation that I'm not privy to. I feel like a puppy. She gulps her cap, says she has to meet Kitty, who was busted on a setup, says I can go along. Kitty's at a bar talking to some British guy. He wants a friend. He asks if I do the same thing Kitty does. He has very bad breath and tells me he makes a lot of money. I order a tonic and lime. I've had enough booze and coffee. Kitty works in a massage parlor, and when 2 men came in who turned out to be cops, she was busted. Now she's depressed. It was her first bust, and on top of that, the cops gave her the clap. Margot's going to make a test case out of it. The VD should help. People in this game are always talking about cases in courts. They drive me to the airport. Kitty and Margot talk about a boyfriend who can only get it up with his wife, whom he doesn't love, or something like that. I use my illegal ticket, obtained from a friend's credit card and under someone else's name, to get a flight home to Los Angeles. Fortunately, they don't ask for my ID. It blows my cover when they do. Margot thinks that decriminalizing prostitution will be the largest blow to sexism yet struck. When women are free to sell and control their sex, the image of whore can't be held up to keep other women in line. I wonder how pimps fit into this picture. June 27th, 1974, Lois in Los Angeles. I meet Lois through a woman who heard her present a paper on pimp strategies at a sociology conference. I visit her apartment in Westwood. She talks open and talks freely and fast. I'm already suspicious of people I meet in this life. The principles of the game itself make me question how their stories check out. I give Lois the deep quiz she offers readily. Her first lover, a black man, became a pimp while she was living with him. When she found out, she split, but she still sees him occasionally and would like to get together with him when his story checks out.
Which street corners are they on?
Lois met 2 men in a Mercedes at Los Angeles International Airport. They gave her and a friend money for an apartment. The men kept them for several months. Pleading fear and innocence, Lois managed to never sleep with her benefactor once during the 6 months he supported her. When he thought she wanted too much money, he dropped her. But in the meantime, a friend showed her photo to a gentleman in DC. He agreed to keep her. Over a several-month period, she only saw him a few times: a night in Texas, a week in Georgia, and a day in Cuernavaca, where she told him to fuck off.
Do you feel loved when someone spends money on you?
Now she works at a high-class nightclub while she does her research on pimping strategy for her UCLA thesis. She obviously loves the life and is caught up in its intrigue, battles of wit, gaming, and competition. She lives a double life. Her personal style as a sociologist and a player is the same: aggressive, ambitious, and intelligent. I suggest we work on an art project together. July 12, 1974, Saturday lunch with the girls. At the Hyatt Regency, I have a shrimp salad. Hookers and pimps hang out here, but only one this afternoon. They're tolerated because the hotel is frequented by show business types. Lois and Ann are both kept by older men. They're well-dressed, jeweled, and know the Beverly Hills scenes. Ann gets $800 a month from her 70-year-old lover, but she's in love with the musician. He accepts her older friend as necessary to support her in the style she'd like. Her lover has his own style, makes $40,000 a year, she speculates. Ann says her mother doesn't want to know how she's making a living, but she's happy to exploit the benefits. Connections in the form of the hustle. Tickets for your mom in Vegas, nice clothes, finding your next man.
Have you ever been kept by a lover?
Lois doesn't enjoy sex with a man who keeps her, calls it the 5-minute ordeal. He is jealous, sees her 3 times a week, would like to fuck each time, but 1, he can't, and 2, she has him convinced she has a sexual hang-up. He would like to believe it. Lois is still emotionally involved with Bill the pimp. They play the game together, and she's still trying to beat him. She explains to us in great detail how she catches him in his lies and elaborate strategies. I'm aware of my own strategies with my lovers and my reluctance to cop to them. They say no is the most valuable word a woman in the business can know. Men don't want sex as much as the pursuit. We talk about how they could only love men who know the game, but they'd like to work on their relationship to those men so that one day there would be no games. They take me on a tour and I begin to see the importance of place. Sunset at Highland, a hot spot for hooking. I'm amazed since I've passed it hundreds of times and only noticed the Hollywood High School sign. Daniel's Coffee Shop. Pimps wait there for their hoes along with an assortment of transvestites, transsexuals, and gay men. Sunset Boulevard. A large black man wearing an open blue vest stands guard outside a massage parlor. A white woman in bright red shorts goes into a nearby liquor store. Western and Santa Monica. Prime for street walking. My lover's optical film printing studio is near here. The dirt in Hollywood depresses her, Anne says.
Has your boyfriend picked up a hooker when you weren't in town?
July 14th, 1974, Pross Court in Beverly Hills. Lois and I go to court, where we meet Kristen and George, who go there to watch the Pross cases. I talk to George to find out more about the Church of Naturalism, while Lois gets hustled by a lawyer who keeps drawing her aside. I have a feeling of kinship with Lois. We naturally fall into gathering information to share later. George tells me how the court works. When a woman is first brought in, she doesn't know the language or behavior of the court. Often, she was entrapped by a cop who solicited her, fucked her, and then arrested her. Cops aren't supposed to fuck the whores. They also can't entrap them. Legally, they must wait until the hooker solicits them. But in court, it's their word against the woman, and the cops know the language and behavior of the innocent. George feels this is a learned behavior that the hookers don't get a chance to learn. After a woman has been in court enough times, what she learns is the behavior of the guilty. So she's always found guilty. They reduce the charges to loitering, get her to plead guilty and pay her fine. Occasionally, she gets sent up to Sybil Brand jail.
Have you ever bought your way out of something with sex?
Sybil Brand, George says, was built on the money left to the county by a rich woman. Her will specified the jail was to be a non-barred, minimum security detention center for women. After she died, the county built a prison instead. Her lawyer's been in court for several years trying to get the money back. The dead woman appears to have been pimped by the county, and her name is still on the monolithic tombstone in downtown Los Angeles. July 15, 1974, dinner at Bruno's. Tina works downtown in juvenile prevention. She's worked there for 5 years, and her attitude has changed. She grew up in Georgia in a straight family. Her mother didn't tell her about sex, and she tells me she has a hard time getting into it. At first, she hated the prostitutes and then learned that, in fact, she resented what she thought was their sexual freedom, their ability to give their bodies to just anyone, while she had difficulty giving it to someone she loved. This is one of my curiosities. Was there something wrong with me that I placed such a symbolic load on sex that I couldn't have sex casually, like eating? Do people in and out of the life have different definitions of sex? Was I being manipulated with the hose dream to think that sex was something special, reserved for monogamous relationship? Tina says the pimps are brutal and beat their girls. She tells me of 2 young female pimps. They're both gay and have a stable of young women who turn tricks and give them the money. They don't use physical force on their hookers and appear to hold out the promise of monogamous love to motivate their hoes. We're both somehow pleased. Tina's not in the life, and I can see the absence of gaming in her personality. Me too. I operate under a code of psychological fair play. Feel I should cop to any hint of my manipulation. An honest relationship shouldn't have secrets. Women shouldn't manipulate men. But in the life, strategies are the name of the game. No guilt.
Have you ever had sex out of obligation?
July 20th, 1974, a night out with the boys. Brian is my best friend Paul's lover. He used to be a male prostitute. We dress up together and take off, me with lots of makeup and looking rather hard and hoe-like. We drive to Selma Avenue and Brian stands alone on a street corner. I lean against the church on the other side of the street, watching. Brian certainly does outclass the other boy hookers as he talks and gestures to men in slow-moving cars. Men driving by think I'm hooking. Curiously, I'm not afraid. Maybe because Brian's here and it's not yet dark. A guy parked in a car honks and motions. I ignore him and he comes over. This guy, Dino, asks if I'm tricking and says he can fix me up at the Beverly Hilton, where he works. I say I'm not, but he doesn't quite believe me. I invite him to join Brian and me for coffee. We go to the Gold Cup, and he tells us he's a high-class hooker, only works calls, makes 1 or 2 bills per evening. He also says he's straight. It's obvious he's bullshitting and scrambling to find a way to hit on me. Dino takes off, leaving us with a bill. The Gold Cup is filled with gay men, transsexuals, and an occasional female hooker. It's impossible to drink the coffee or eat anything they serve. Greasy grilled BLTs with fries, grilled cheese. Brian points out the old men who cluster around the corner near the newsstand, hoping to blow a young boy down on his luck who needs a hamburger. He says you can often spot a hooker by her shoulder bag. 2 men dressed like women come in. One grabs the other's false breast.
Did you wonder if you were desired for your money?
We go outside and stand looking at nude magazines on the corner of Highland and Hollywood. Brian says this is a good pickup spot. I buy a Playgirl, an Advocate, and a Free Press for research. I walk behind him on the boulevard and watch the older men turn and stare at him. Brian says this is sleazy lowlife hustling, and he will take me to the class joints when we're dressed better. August 27th, 1974, Peter the John. On 6th and Los Angeles streets, near the Greyhound bus station, 2 hookers stand, their backs to the bus bench. You can tell who they are by their stillness, solitary, poised, and waiting. Both wear hats. Downtown is said to be the end of the line for prostitutes. I'm aware now of a communication system among men who seem to be able to find out where the whores are, even in strange cities. A man walks up to talk. He's from Florida, here on business, sells auto parts and drives a motorcycle. I mention there are hookers here as an opening, and he says he knows, he's just been talking to one. I ask if he himself goes to hookers, and he says about once a month. He asks, what kind of sex was I into? And did I ever hook? Interspersed with a pleasant and frank conversation in which he says he likes the looks on hookers' faces when they see the size of his dick, which is big around, though not so long. He's noticed my camera. Would I let him take pictures of me, he asks. To provoke, I ask him if he knew that some hookers dislike men, and he says vaguely, yeah, a lot of them were bisexual, and not to be distracted, he asked me if I'm one.
Did you imagine that the whore enjoyed it?
He says that he doesn't want any of the black or Chicano women who are here tonight, but that he's looking for a white woman. I know this is a coded invitation. We're in a subtle language game, one I understand to be predicated on my volition, not on violence. I recommend the gay baths on Melrose that my friend Paul, Brian's lover, frequents. Thrust, parry. I ask why he goes to hookers, and he says it's easy, uncomplicated, you can leave all the hassle. As we're talking, several hoes walk by and give me unfriendly looks. Cars stop everywhere. Men follow hookers into rooms. Some leave quickly, as if they can't agree on a price. A trip to Mexico. In Baja, just over the border, I stay alone in a hotel room overlooking the ocean. I'm reading all the books I can find about the life. My lover paid for this trip. We were students together, and he was poor then too. Now he makes a lot more money than I do. I feel insecure and insist on defining the terms of his economic support. One trip, a dinner, a treat. Am I interested in prostitution because I'm afraid to take money from men? Is this about power? I'm immersed in a completely new way of perceiving the world, and yet it is so familiar that it slides seamlessly into my ideas about relationships between the sexes. All men are hoes. All women are hoes. All men are pimps or tricks, and sometimes both. The pimp, Blade, appeals to a woman's natural instincts. He accepts her hoe nature. He gives her the guidance and control over her life she naturally needs. She tricks the man for him. She exchanges her sex for the trick's money. The pimp in turn tricks her. He exchanges his sex and illusions for her money. Everyone gets their sex and their illusion, except the pimp, who gets the money. I give my lover the books to read when he arrives. He experiences the same perceptual shift as I have. He starts gaming with me. After a while, it gets obnoxious, so I use various strategies to counter his pimp behavior. He loves it and finds it erotic.
Heartbroken.
Thank you.